Why, hello. So, yesterday we read Mike's story about softball, right? And the advice he got from Yoda about not being overcome by his emotions. Today is Sarah's story. Origami Yoda and the twist. Rondella and Amy and I sit at one table in the library every morning before school. And Kellen and Tommy and all those guys sit at the next table. They are noisy and annoying and spend half the time blabbing at us. We've talked about moving tables, but we haven't. And I think it may be because Rondella doesn't mind Kellen trying to flirt with her as much as she says she does. And Amy and Lance often end up talking about science fiction and stuff. I may have my own reasons for staying too, but that's my business. If nothing else, it gives us something to laugh about, usually Harvey. Wait, have we met Sara before? Is Sara. Who is Sara? Is Sara the character that Tommy likes that we heard about in the beginning? You know what? I'm going to zoom back. This is what I do when I have a physical book, too. I like to. We know he almost asked Hannah out. Back to the beginning. Sara. Yep. Sara is the girl he wants to ask out. That helps. Okay. She's talking about how they sit at the library and the boys ignore her, and she has her own reasons for not changing tables. So, this one time, the guys were fussing at Dwight about Origami Yoda. Dwight was loving it. He loves to play dumb, but he's got this sly smirk on his face. He's my next door neighbor, so I've been seeing that sly smirk for about 10 years. Have I told you before about the holes he digs in his backyard? Just digs them and then sits in them and then fills them back up. He may not be dumb, but he is definitely weird. The first time we saw him at school with the Yoda finger puppet, Rondella and Amy were like, "That's so weird." And I was like, "Not compared to sitting in holes all day." Can you believe Dwight does that? He digs holes in his backyard and then sits in them? Oh. Anyway, Dwight was totally digging all the attention he and Yoda were getting. "I can't help it," he was saying. "If that's what Origami Yoda says, that's what he says." "But it doesn't make any sense," groaned Kellen. "I asked him where I lost my jacket, and he's like, 'The twist you must learn.'" "That's all he's saying to anybody," said Tommy. "I tried to ask him something too, and so did Lance. At first, I thought it was really the answer to my question, but he keeps saying it. I think he's lost it." "He's never had it," said Harvey. They kept yammering like that for a while, and we tried to ignore them. Then Dwight gets up and comes over to the table with Yoda on his finger and says, "The twist you must learn." Then he goes over to the next table and the next, and pretty soon he has told everybody in the library to learn the twist. Then he left the library, apparently to spread Yoda's wisdom to the rest of the school. Like I said, after 10 years, I've gotten used to it. Twist. "So what is the twist?" I asked Tommy. "I don't have any idea," he said. "Why don't you Google it?" asked Amy. All the computers were taken, but Lance was using one, so Tommy and Kellen went over to ask him to look it up. "Too bad they didn't ask me," said Harvey. "I know all about it." Big surprise. Harvey thinks he knows everything. "The twist was a song on the Spider-Man 3 soundtrack," he said. "Wait a minute," said Rondella. You bought the Spider-Man soundtrack? Spider-Man 3, of course. I have the ones from the other two, too. We looked at each other and tried not to giggle. Don't you remember the part in the movie when? We tuned him out. Callan and Tommy came back and told us it was some old song, and Harvey goes, "We already know that," and acted like an idiot as usual, and then the bell rang. Maybe we need to move to another table or another room, or another school. That night, Amy was over at my house for supper, and so was my grandmother. My grandmother is at our house all the time now that she and my granddad got divorced. Amy and I were looking up stuff on YouTube, and we couldn't think of anything else to look up. Then Amy said, "Why don't you look up the twist?" "You really think it's on here?" I asked, but is already typing it in. There were tons of twist videos, it turned out. We picked one, and a guy comes on, like from a real old TV show, and says, "Come on, baby, let's do the twist." Then they start playing this song. Real old-timey, but not bad, I guess. That's when my grandmother pops in. That's when my grandmother pops in. "Are you two doing the twist up here?" she says. We're listening to it. "No, you can't just listen to the twist. You got to get up and do it." And then she sort of squatted down and started wiggling her knees back and forth and waving her hands. So she's like, I wasn't too embarrassed. I've gotten used to her doing strange stuff in front of my friends. But then she starts singing along and changing the words. "Come on, little Sara," and her friend Amy, who didn't even match the song. She kept on singing and insisting that we try it too. So we did, and it turned out to be fun. Once you start swinging your knees and your arms to the beat, it's pretty easy. You should stand up right now and do the twist, guys. Come on, stand up. We had just started getting into it when it was time for supper, but my grandmother wanted to keep dancing. My parents were going out that night, so after supper I called Rondella to come over. And she and Amy and my grandmother and I did all kinds of crazy dances that Grammy used to do when she was a kid. And we had a great time. And seriously, I haven't seen my grandmother that happy in a long time. Not since the divorce, and not before it either. I don't know about Dwight or Origami Yoda. I don't know how he could have known it would have worked out like that, but it did. And it was awesome. So, did you pick up what happened here? That by learning the twist, the grandmother had an amazing time, right? Excuse me, Harvey's comment. Excuse me while I get a tissue. A tear is rolling slowly down my cheek after reading that. It's like a Hallmark Channel movie. It's so beautiful. My comment. Well, maybe it really is beautiful. It does sound like a lot of fun. However, I wish Origami Yoda had just told Sara about the twist and not everybody else, because I wasted half an hour in my room practicing it by myself. Okay, so for today's activity, even though it was Sara's chapter, I actually want you to think and talk about Dwight. So, almost every chapter, Dwight has come up, right? He's not the main character, that seems to be Tommy, but Dwight is the one with Origami Yoda on his finger. And he's talked about right at the beginning of the book by Tommy, and every character brings him up, and Sara brought him up. I put this paragraph here. Have I told you before about the holes he digs in his backyard? Just digs them and then sits in them and fills them back up? He may not be dumb, but he is definitely weird. The first time we saw him at school with the Yoda finger puppet, Rondell and Amy were like, that's so weird. And I was like, not compared to sitting in holes all day. So I want you to think about Dwight, and I want you to come up with a word for him. And whatever word that is, it could be weird, it could be wise. I'm sure there's other ones. I want you to give 2 examples that prove that word. Okay? And we've actually heard quite a few stories about him. So I'll be interested with what you come up with. All right. Thank you.